And I think truth overall in these marketplaces does outcompete fiction. The problem is that power also outcompetes weakness. Right. And so we have these ideas that are basically empowering or self-empowering that basically sort of, like dominate these markets and become basically there's totally unaccountable and there's no power that can remove them. So, for example, one of the things that...
So, for example, just for the experts, right?
Yeah.
These experts. Council on Foreign Relations, are those the experts?
Those are definitely the experts.
International Monetary Fund, are those the experts?
Sure, but
IMF.
here's another
Okay.
example. Here's another example.
Okay.
Basically, Peter Daszak and his friends.
Yes.
You may have covered that.
Yeah, well, we haven't covered it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know what I'm talking about. So
Yes.
the best place to read about Peter Daszak and his friends is in all places. One of my favorite magazines. It's called Vanity Fair.
Yes.
And for some reason, Vanity Fair has done some very good articles lately.
Yes.
I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe they took some acid. I don't know. We'll get to the acid soon.
Sure.
But they did two really excellent articles about the birth of COVID that were not, basically beholden to the virology industry. And I think that basically probably the previous industry that has done as much damage as the virology industry to human health is probably the tobacco industry.
Right.
And so basically when you sort of look at what happened in virology, it's sort of as good a case against the American system as Chernobyl is against the Russian system.
Right.
The difference is it killed about 1,000 times as many people.
Right.
Maybe 10,000. Not
Right.
clear. A lot more. And essentially what happened here is, there's a funny way to tell the story about COVID, which is as a kid. Remember, I grew up as
And you were one of the first people on the internet to say this is going to be a problem.
Yes. I was saying I started writing a piece in the middle of January. I actually started investing in COVID. I bought like deep out of the money puts.
Wow.
It was insane to be betting on COVID because you become like pro COVID. You start talking your book.
Yeah,
that was
of course.
really weird.
Yeah.
That really biased my coverage, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
I'll admit that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, in a way, that's the same effect as the effect that corrupts these systems. So what happened in the case of, here's my narrative of COVID. So when I was a kid, I was in the Commonwealth world in like Cyprus, and it was very easy to get like British books. One very common form of British books were these books by Gerald Durrell, brother of Lawrence Durrell. HBO, where someone had the Durrells in Corfu had this beautiful, why not show that was basically made out of his wonderful memoirs. Absolutely great to read when I was 12. And Durrell was a zoologist, and he went around collecting little fluffy animals from like imperiled Commonwealth countries in which, barbarians were about at the gates, right? It was just a crazy times, like the 50s and 60s.
Pillaging,
everything is falling apart, right? And he's collecting beautiful, fluffy animals for his little zoo back in England. And he does well with this, and he does well with his books. He founds a zoo in Jersey, not New Jersey, but Jersey. And he basically, creates this organization called the Wildlife Trust, which is dedicated to, getting rich old ladies to give money to go and collect little fluffy animals. Sounds like a win. Along comes this guy, Peter Daszak, who has some like bullshit degree from somewhere, but is really a science administrator. And he decides, and he becomes the administrator of the Wildlife Trust. And he decides that he can start getting grants, bigger grants, better grants, by changing the mission of the Wildlife Trust slightly to have it go around, instead of collect little fluffy animals, collect viruses, specifically bat coronaviruses. So he turns the Wildlife Trust into something called Eco Health Alliance, if you've heard the name, which is an organization that basically kind of gets massive grants and redistributes them to scientists to basically find and study bat coronaviruses. And some of this work is done in China. This is not really a thing about Chinese science. Maybe it's something about how like sloppy things are in China, but like there's a word for like, I'm going to butcher the Chinese.
This is a Chinese word you were saying.
Chabuduo.
Chabuduo.
It means.
No, you did it great. I speak Mandarin.
Oh, awesome.
Fluently.
Awesome. My daughter speaks Mandarin.
Fluently.
I was like, wow, you just fixed that.
Yeah, no, I speak fluent Mandarin.
Awesome. So basically, this research into bat coronaviruses is subcontracted, which is to like biosafety level 2, labs
research facilities
in like the boondocks of China, right?
Wuhan.
Wuhan. Right. It's not Shanghai, right? And it's like, what would be the American equivalent of Wuhan?
Detroit.
Right. Okay.
If we heard that they were doing the most important or any kind of important virus research in Detroit, we would be
asking more questions. Right. So this research is basically subcontracted to Detroit. Now, two things about this research. One is its justification is to, quote, predict the emergence of, novel coronaviruses. The cause of this research was the original outbreak of SARS.
Right.
And in fact, one of the people involved in like virology governance is a technical advisor to the Steven Soderbergh film Contagion, which is well worth watching, which is from the mid-aughts, I think.
Yes.
Which is basically explicitly about a bat coronavirus.
Yes.
So because this happened, basically bat coronaviruses are a problem.
So
and because it's a problem, so we're popping the stack now. So getting back to this problem. So okay, bat coronaviruses are a problem. Therefore, they're important. Therefore, you can get grants to study them. You don't have to rely on little old ladies anymore. Instead of collecting animals, you're collecting bat viruses, which means you collect bats. So basically the same thing, right?
Right.
You're getting all these grants to study bat coronaviruses. The more important your work is, the more money it will get. Makes sense. We allocate money by importance.
Yes.
Right. The more dangerous bat coronaviruses are, the more money you will get. Now, bat coronaviruses are bat viruses. To operate in humans, they have to mutate. They have to be changed. They have to be mutate either naturally through passaging
or they have to be
artificially through editing.
In
the lab. And we know that was going on. And we know that basically in the course of like 4 days, the like head virologists of the world changed their minds, which they'd come into like, this looks like a lab leak to this doesn't look like a lab leak.
Right.
There will never be any accountability for these motherfuckers.
Never.
And there's no power that's going to say, hey, science, you're fucked. And the way in which science is fucked is like, this is a good example case because basically here is this problem of like bat coronaviruses. It's a real problem. No one disputes that. SARS really emerged from animals. It was not a weird Soviet experiment that escaped. Right. So it is possible for this to be a threat. Because it is possible for it to be a threat, it is a problem. Therefore, one can get grants to study this. The worse a problem it seems to be, the more grants you're going to get. So you have basically a feedback loop in the marketplace of ideas in which this idea basically brings power to that market. Right. So if you're basically a bat coronavirus researcher and you're like, you know what are we going to do if we predict an outbreak?
Right.
It's like I predict there will be an earthquake in the Bay Area. Okay, let's build our houses a little stronger. Right. What have you actually done here? Like, was any of this research useful in solving the actual outbreak? So absolutely not.
The profit motive in the marketplace of ideas can corrupt.
Right, but it's not specifically. It's sort of when you think of a profit motive, that's not really the way academics think. They think of like an empire building motive. They think like my career is more successful if this is a bigger problem.
Yes,
and so they basically play Pokemon with bat coronaviruses, and then they like mutate their fucking Pokemon to make them as dangerous as possible in like basically low rent Walmart tier labs in Detroit.
Right.
And then they're basically like, when you step back, the important thing is when you pull the camera back and you look at this behavior. Okay, this is absolutely.
So we've kind of been blaming China for this.
But
China, we're letting China off the. And we are a fan of China on this show, and we believe in one China. We don't even know what Taiwan is. So
incredibly based, incredibly based. But this isn't a China problem. This is a U.S. problem. This is a problem with the way we do shit. And we basically said we're going to take the experts. Who's going to watch the watchdogs? Ancient political question.
Right.
And they're like, well, why don't the experts watch the watchdogs? Excellent answer. And then the question is, who watches the experts? And they're like, well, I guess they could watch themselves. Right. And when they watch themselves, they do shit like this, which is every bit as dumb as like what it was done in fucking Chernobyl, where they're like, let's turn off the backup safety systems to prove that our reactor is safe if we turn off the safety systems.
That breakdown of COVID was the best I've ever heard.
Thank you.
I have never heard it anywhere else.
Thank you.
And will I hear it anywhere else?
Who the fuck knows?
And that's the problem. Because, by the way, you just did, in a few minutes, in the most succinct way I've ever heard, and I read and listen to stuff all the time, you literally broke down not only the problem, but what incubates the problem and why the problem won't go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In fact, these motherfuckers are getting even more funding.
That's right.
Because their shit is important. Their shit is important.
The funding is going to be out of
because
control.
It's off the fucking charts. You know.
Yeah, right. I mean, the things they're going to be making now.
Yeah. No. And just there's more research for everything involved in this, right? And so inevitably, there's a little skepticism around gain of function. It's like you don't want to call it that. But this is everywhere. It's like I have a friend who is I'm going to disguise his identity. He's a leading figure in a film in a field that is related to physics.
Okay.
And it's related enough that he knows physics quite well. And I was talking about this problem with him. And he was like, oh yeah, why, in physics, it's so bad that there are entire workshops about string theory that aren't about string theory. They just have to actually pretend to be about string theory because the string theorists are in command of the funding because physics is funded by physics.
Right.
So the thing is, when that starts to happen in like the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, right, you're basically just like the idiots are in charge and doing idiotic things, and there is no accountability for them anywhere in any possible way, shape, or form.
Right.
So let's get back to the acid. So I think motherfuckers deserve a break after that.
Yes.
Anyway, so
they're digesting it because that by the way, and not even to just be overly complimentary, but like it's amazing that not only has that not been talked about more broadly,
right,
but it hasn't been put in a context that people can understand.
Well,
and not only understand that this is a huge problem, but that it is by design, and the design it self-perpetuates.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for...
And this is poverty. This is everything, right?
Yeah, right.
This is poverty. This is homelessness. I was in San Francisco. There are guys with like devil horns on all fours on fentanyl.
You were in Dorr Street.
No, where was I? I was in the Tenderloin.
This was the piss orgy
rally. I was
rally,
in El Farolito eating a quesadilla in the Mission, and I'm watching all this stuff go on. And I love that city, but it has problems.
It has issues.
And I'm looking at these... I
lived there for 20 years.
And I'm looking at these compassion centers, homeless centers.
Navigation centers.
On every street.
They're navigation centers.
And no one's in them. And no one cares.
No, it's insane.
And it has nothing to do with anything.
And it's run by the homeless industrial complex.
That's right.
The chief executive, I'm not giving too much away, but like the chief expert of the San Francisco homeless complex.
Yeah.
Was actually my girlfriend 20 years ago.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So it's you did it.
Yeah, right. So, and that really informed me a lot about this kind of mentality, right?
Yeah.